So we introduced restorative approaches because we could really see the benefits of it. Quite a lot of staff at Auchinleck Academy have been using restorative approaches for some time prior to our decision to implement it as a whole school policy, a whole school approach. And what we were seeing really clearly was that the staff who were working with and interacting with young people in a restorative way, when there were problems or incidents of conflict, that these were the teachers who had by far the best relationships with pupils, fewest behaviour incidents, and pupils were generally really engaged in their classes. So it made total sense to build on that good practice that was already going on in some areas of the school and focus on developing a more consistent whole school approach to the use of restorative practice, and to start really moving away from the use of more traditional punitive measures, which we felt no longer reflected our values and you know, the direction that we wanted to go in as a nurturing and rights respecting school. We had also done a lot of work with staff over several years, supported by our educational psychologist, to raise awareness of issues such as early childhood development and how trauma can affect a young person's development. And we learned about attachment theory, nurture principles. And because of that, we were developing a really good understanding, I think, of different behaviours, and we realised that we did need to change some of our approaches, and we started really to question the use of punishments and especially exclusions, why we would punish or exclude a child who struggles with their self-regulation, probably as a result of negative experiences that they've had in their lives. Why would we disadvantage them further? We don't punish a child who struggles with their reading or their writing. We teach them, we support them. Why would it be any different for a child who has behavioural needs? And we have a lot of young people in our school who have social, emotional and behavioural needs, young people who require and are entitled to support. So introducing restorative approaches, we felt, was one of the ways that we could provide that support across the school by all staff modelling positive and respectful relationships, but by helping to equip our pupils with the skills that they needed to support them with their self-regulation and help them to build and maintain relationships and repair relationships when they broke down. Well, the first step that we took to start introducing restorative practice as a whole school approach was to scrap our existing behaviour management policy, which was really no longer fit for purpose. It was all about managing and controlling behaviour through the use of punishments and sanctions. And we set about developing a new relationship policy or relationship framework, which we now call it, which provided guidance for staff on building and maintaining respectful relationships in order to promote positive behaviour through the use of restorative approaches, and also nurturing rights-based approaches, which are obviously very closely linked. And we got a group of staff together who were interested in getting involved in writing the new framework. And throughout that process, we spent a lot of time consulting with staff, with pupils and with parents, and responding to their feedback, making changes, until we felt that we had it right and had a policy that everybody was happy with. And I think that whole consultation process was really important, because obviously your relationship policy affects everyone. It affects everything that goes on in the school. It's so central, to your ethos and culture as a school. And in order for pupils and staff to really buy into it, it was important that they felt ownership over it, rather than feeling that it was something that was being imposed on them. And we spent a lot of time throughout that process educating staff on the theory, the psychology behind restorative approaches, and all members of staff were trained in the use of restorative approaches. And it was very fortunate, because our formulation of a relationships framework at Auchinleck Academy coincided with the launch of a restorative approaches training programme by the East Ayrshire support team, which had started as a Scottish Attainment Challenge project, and we were involved in that. All East Ayrshire schools were. We were asked to send along some representatives to attend the training course, which was delivered by Education Scotland and the East Ayrshire support team. And the staff who attended the course then became trainers, and we were tasked with rolling out the training programme within our own schools, which is what we did. We devoted an in-service day to it. And each year since then, we've repeated that training for any new members of staff or any members of staff who just want a refresh, to ensure that everybody feels comfortable using restorative approaches and has the confidence and skills that they need to be able to do so effectively. So I would say, as a result of that, now restorative approaches are pretty well embedded in our practice and being used consistently across the school. Well, I think in Auchinleck Academy, we've developed a really supportive, caring, inclusive ethos, and our use of restorative approaches has definitely really contributed to that. I think that using restorative approaches helps our young people to feel cared for and valued and respected, because they're listened to, and when there is an incident of conflict, everybody affected has a chance to tell their story. And that has definitely helped to strengthen relationships between staff and pupils, first of all, because pupils see that staff are being fair. They appreciate that staff are seeking to understand and work through problems with them together and focusing on solutions rather than focusing on who's to blame and how do we punish them. I think that it has also improved relationships between pupils, because it's an approach that teaches empathy for other people's feelings, respect for other people's rights. So when there's been a fallout, a fight, or any incident of wrongdoing, the focus is not so much on the school rules that have been broken, but on the harm that's been caused to other people and what we can do to repair that harm, address the conflict and meet the needs of everyone who's been affected, so that relationships can be repaired and we can move on and learn from the experience. Ultimately, introducing restorative approaches has contributed to a big improvement in behaviour and a dramatic reduction in our exclusion rates. And I think that's because, as well as the focus on building relationships, which impacts so much on behaviour, the restorative approach is so much about educating young people so that they can learn from mistakes. If we don't teach young people why certain behaviours are wrong or harmful, then often there's no acceptance of fault and no opportunity for learning. So the child continues to repeat the same behaviour over and over again, and that's certainly what we had experienced in the past. But with a restorative approach, we help young people to learn from experiences, to understand the impact that behaviour can have on others. It teaches young people to be responsible for their actions and to reflect on future behaviour, so that the next time they're in a similar situation, hopefully they don't just repeat the same behaviour over again. I think that with any change that you introduce, you're always going to come up against some resistance initially. And although the majority of our staff were very much on board, many of them were using restorative approaches already and could see the benefits of using restorative approaches. There were others who had concerns, which we understood. Some people, I think, perceived it as a soft touch and were of the opinion that if a child has done wrong, then they should be punished, that's life. But our response to that was, well, first of all, let's remember that we're dealing with young people who are still learning, and it's our job to educate them. And many of the young people who do present challenging behaviour in schools are the ones who maybe don't have consistent adults at home to guide them, role models to model respectful relationships and appropriate behaviour. And so it's over to us to do that. And we also challenged that perception that some staff had of restorative approaches being a soft option, because we felt that it's really not. It's very much about challenging inappropriate behaviour, about holding young people to account and ensuring that young people accept responsibility for any wrongdoing. It's just about doing that, though, in a supportive way that avoids shaming a child. And actually, for some young people, having to confront the people that they've harmed and acknowledge that person's feelings and apologise can be much harder, I think, than doing a punishment exercise or a detention or an exclusion. Another concern that some staff raised was about the amount of time that they felt would have to be involved in having a restorative meeting and restorative conversations with a child. And it's true that you do have to devote time to it, But then it's the same with punitive approaches, and we made that point during our discussions with staff. It also takes time issuing punishments, chasing things up when they don't get completed, writing out referrals. And wouldn't it be better investing that time in an approach that's going to educate our young people to change and improve their behaviour, and is more likely to lead to an improvement in your relationship with a child, which in turn is more likely to lead to an improvement in your well-being and also the well-being of the child. So we just really overcame those challenges and addressed concerns that staff had by having lots of discussions, by listening to staff, talking through those concerns, and really reassuring staff that they would be supported throughout the process. And it was helpful as well for staff to hear from colleagues who had really positive experiences of using restorative approaches, and there were lots of us. Well, I would definitely recommend introducing restorative approaches. To me, it just makes so much sense. It's about treating our young people with respect, the way that we would want to be treated. It's about educating young people so that they can change and improve their behaviour. And it's also about encouraging young people to be responsible for their actions and to do the right thing. And most importantly, it's about building really strong, respectful relationships, and everyone benefits from that. And it does lead to change. We just can't expect that to happen overnight. It's an approach that does require time and patience. And a lot of our young people struggle with trust and relationships, so we have to persevere and not give up on a child. And there has to be a buy-in from all staff. But I think that if you're prepared to make that commitment, then it will lead to improved relationships, improved behaviour, improved well-being of pupils and staff too, and ultimately improved learning and teaching, engagement. That certainly has been my experience of using restorative approaches for many years and seeing others use it.